So just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, and I think these two lenses that I have right here in front of me are shining examples of that principle. I bought these some years ago when I was updating my collection and decided that I needed a full set of autofocus prime lenses, so I bought these two, a 24 millimeter f2.8 and a 20 millimeter f2.8. These are both well-known optical formulas. The 22.8, the optical formula, was introduced in 1984 with the AIS series and remains in production today in both autofocus and manual focus form. Likewise, the 24-28, this series lens was the optical formula was introduced in 1977 with the AI series, might have been the K series. Possibly the K. There may be a few K series with this formula. At any rate, it was introduced in 1977, around the time of the introduction of the AI series, if not exactly at that time. And the optical formula has remained constant. And this lens remains available in both manual focus and autofocus forms. So when I bought these, why did I buy the autofocus? I mean, I just told you why. I mean, because I was updating my set, my collection. I thought that, well, autofocus is the wave of the future. Everybody's getting autofocus, and so, all the digital stuff is autofocus, so I better get autofocus. So that's what I did. And I'm wondering now, how much added value did I really get buying autofocus versus a manual focus lens in these focal lengths? And here's my point. Autofocus is useful. I think the best thing about autofocus is the ability to track a moving object. I think that's what autofocus really brings to photography that wasn't there before. But on a wide-angle lens, on a 20 and a 28, a 20 and a 24 millimeter lens, how much tracking do you really need? How hard is it to focus these focal length lenses manually? Consider this. So here is a Nikkor NC 24 millimeter f2.8. It's got a good AI conversion. I bought this some years ago, and I'm very happy with it. And in fact, if you read the 1001 Nights blog, where Nikon's optical engineers talk about their lenses, they're really proud of this one. They put a lot of work into this. This was the first lens with the CRC close range correction system for close focusing, and they're really proud of it. Although, having said that, the optical engineers admit that the subsequent formula was better. That is, the formula represented by this lens is better than this one. But nonetheless, they're still really proud of this one, and I'm very happy with the results I've had with it. If you're shooting, say, at f8, and you set this lens to hyperfocal distance at f8, and if you don't know what hyperfocal is, that's kind of important to this discussion, so please take a look at the video I did on hyperfocal. So if you set the lens to hyperfocal f8, then you're going to get everything in focus from about 1.2, 1.3 meters to infinity is going to be in focus. Likewise, this is my personal favorite 24. This is the f2. This happens to be the AIS version, indicated by the orange coloring of the final aperture in the ADR scale, indicating AIS series, although the AIS has no added value in my opinion, and I've also done a video on that, slightly off topic, but so let's take the AIS now. This AIS series 24-2 does not have a hyperfocal mark for f8, but it has hyperfocal marks for 5, 6, and 11. So let's set it for hyperfocal 5, 6. Put the infinity symbol over the hyperfocal mark for 5, 6, and I'm getting everything from about, let's say, 1.6 or 1.7 meters out to infinity is going to be in focus. If I move that over to f11, I'm going to get everything from 7/10 of a meter out to infinity in focus. So basically, at an intermediate apertures, if you're shooting a manual focus 24, you're going to get everything from just over a meter out to infinity in focus. Do you really need a whole lot more than that? What are you shooting with a 24 or a 20 millimeter lens that requires more flexibility than that. I mean, unless you're doing close-up work, obviously. I mean, this lens has the CRC system, the close range correction system, so it can do some close-up work. So let's take a look at that for a second. Suppose I'm doing close-up work, again, f8 with this lens, and the closest I can get is 3/10 of a meter, and at infinity, the number 3 is directly over the index mark, so let's put the number 3 directly over the index mark for hyperfocal f8. And that's going to give me 3.35 to 0.3. So that's about a 5 centimeter plane of focus or zone of focus. Not a plane. A plane is a two-dimensional concept. Zone of focus, 5 centimeters. And 5 centimeters is pretty nice. That's a pretty nice, nice deep field of focus. If you're getting really close. I mean, if you're shooting 3/10 of a meter from something, and you got 5 centimeters of wiggle room in your focus, yeah, you're pretty safe. So the question is then, well, what about the fact that modern autofocus cameras don't have manual focusing aids? Don't you need autofocus for that? No. I think the answer is no. So here's what I did earlier today, just to make sure that I wasn't crazy. I took this lens right here and I set it at wide open aperture, f2, mounted it on my D700, took a few close-up snapshots of various objects laying around the house, just by manually focusing. With no focusing aids, I did not use the focus confirmation dots, which can be a little fidgety. I didn't do that. I just eyeballed it using the unadorned focusing screen. Took half a dozen shots, different objects, different spots around the house. Every single one of them came out tack sharp. It's just not hard to focus a 24 millimeter lens. Even at wide open aperture, you've got a significant bit of wiggle room in terms of depth of field, and it really isn't that difficult. So I'm kind of wondering, why does anyone need autofocus on a 24 millimeter or wider lens? That's kind of my question. Unless you need to track a moving object which is likely to come within 2 meters of where you're standing, I just don't see the value in an autofocus lens. And I know someone's going to say that, well, Nikon's new autofocus 24 and 20 they're so much better. Nikon makes several nice 20 and 24 millimeter lenses in both f1.8 and 1.4 versions. The 1.8 versions are supposedly very nice, but the 24 millimeter f1.8 sells for about $750. The 1.4 version sells for about $2,000. Those are New York prices. Whereas you can get one of these for about a third of that. I mean, for $250, you can find a nice 24 f2. You don't have to get the AIS version. Any version of the 24 f2. Same optical formula. And this thing's going to cost you about the same as one of these. The autofocus 24-28 on the secondhand market goes for about the same price as the manual focus 24 f2. And are you getting anything of value if you sacrifice that stop? And I'm suggesting not. I'm suggesting they do not. And this lens here sells for about half the cost of one of these in comparable condition. So again, if you're budget conscious, do you really need to spend the extra money? If you're going to buy a 24-28, do you really need to spend the extra money for the autofocus? I'm suggesting that the answer is no. And am I wrong? I mean, why would you spend money on autofocus? Does autofocus give you added value in this focal length? I'm just not seeing it. I just don't. This is the only 20 millimeter lens I own. I just don't do a whole lot of work in this focal length. Otherwise, I'd show you the rest of my 20 millimeter lenses, but this is it. I'm kind of wondering, should I just swap this for a manual focus version? Aren't they a little better built? I mean, aren't the manual focus Nikons just a little more solid? I mean, these AF and AFD series, they kind of feel like they're basically just motorized Series E, in terms of their build quality. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. It's just my own subjective impression. So what do you think? Do you really need autofocus on wide-angle lenses? And by wide angle, I mean 24 and wider. What value does autofocus give you? That's my question. I'm not seeing it. I'm just not. But hey, could be wrong. You know what they say about opinions, right? Everybody's got one. So let me know your thoughts. What do you think? Autofocus on 24 and 20 millimeter lenses? Useful? Added value? I'm suggesting maybe not. What do you think? If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and check out the links below, and I will see you next time some idea pops into my head that I think is worth sharing. Take care now. Bye-bye.